A 65-year-old California fugitive has been ordered by a Florida judge to be detained without bond in relation to the murder of a 39-year-old woman. After being detained by U.S. Marshals in California in June, Donald Santini was extradited to the Sunshine State without resistance. The suspect, according to the authorities, has used 13 aliases throughout the years. The last person spotted with Cynthia Cindy Ruth Wood was then 33 years old, Santini. According to the arrest warrant, Santini's fingerprints were found on her body, and strangulation was ruled out to be the cause of death by a medical examiner. You have been running from your remorse for nearly 4 decades. You were running from something and you knew it. At a Tampa hearing on Thursday, July 6th, Judge Catherine Catlin warned Santini, "You are the definition of flight risk." Santini used the alias Charles Michael Stevens in 1984 to elude a Texas warrant for his arrest. He was residing in Campo, California, in the southeast of San Diego County, at the time of his arrest, going under the name Wellman Simmons. According to previous reporting by the Bradenton Herald, Wood met with Santini, who had called her with promises of giving information about her husband, Barry Wood, that may help her obtain custody of their 2 children, who were 5 and 3 years old. Wood had a son from his previous marriage as well. 3 days after she was last seen with Santini, her body was discovered in a damp grave, with police suggesting that she had been strangled. Not long after, he left the city. The judge was requested for bail by Santini's counsel, but the prosecution pointed out that Santini killed Wood after escaping a Texas charge pertaining to a convenience store robbery, in which he was charged with stealing $207 while carrying a knife. Prosecutor Michelle Doherty informed the court, "You have, from his very own mouth, that he has been on the run for 39 years, and he has been purposely using fake IDs so that he can avoid law enforcement." Additionally, the state's attorney's office testified in court that Santini had described Wood's death as a contract killing in interviews. "You are the definition of flight risk," the judge quoted Santini during the hearing. "If I were to let you go, there was nothing I can do to guarantee the safety of this community." Jamie Kane, Santini's public defender, countered that by saying there is no proof the suspect fled Texas, whilst there was an active warrant. Where's the warrant for not showing up? Where's the circuit court case number? Where is the proof that he was released pending trial? Other than Mr. Santini's straightforward statement, "Who is not an expert in law?" Kane stated. Following his passport application under the name Wellman Simmons, Santini was tracked down by the FBI. Denise Kozer, Wood's stepdaughter, told the news on Thursday that she was happy Santini would be detained pending trial. "He is not entitled to any freedom. For 40 years, we haven't been at ease, wondering where he was hiding. And it has been terrible," she said. Dr. Pamela Cie, a law professor at Florida Gulf Coast University, reported to the station alleging Santini's claim that Wood's murder being a result of a contract killing might be detrimental to his case. In many circles, an assassination committed for hire is considered worse than one done out of passion or for another reason. Additionally, CA was unsure if the murder qualified for the death penalty. It is contingent upon the contextual factors involved. Which aggravating factors played a role in the crime? What was the motivation behind this? Furthermore, if a contract hit is being discussed, this may be an exacerbating situation, because you don't want that kind of person back on the streets. That's highly probable, according to CA. Cathy Torrez, a student at California State Fullerton, was brutally stabbed to death in February 1994, at the age of just 20. The investigators had discovered her body in the car's trunk in less than a week, yet it took them almost 20 years to apprehend the murderer, Sam Lopez, a guy she had been dating on and off. In 2015, Lopez confessed to the murder while admitting that he had robbed her of everything. After being found guilty of first-degree murder, he was sentenced to 26 years to life in prison. For assisting him in committing the act, His cousin Xavier Lopez received a prison sentence as well. Cathy Torrez was born and raised in Placentia, California. Her goal was to become a social worker. Therefore, she was majoring in sociology at California State Fullerton. She lived with her mother Mary, stepfather, and 3 siblings while working 2 jobs and going to school. It was well recognized that Cathy was a wonderful person with a promising future. In 1993, Cathy got back in touch with her high school sweetheart, Sam Lopez. Back then, Cathy's older sister Tina was married to Armando, Sam's brother. Soon after their reconnection, Sam and Cathy's relationship took a turbulent turn. The couple would frequently hang out at Cathy's workplace, a local pharmacy called Savon, along with Sam's cousin. But everything promptly fell apart when the 20-year-old, following her shift at Savon on February 12, 1994, did not return home as routine. Not long after, she was reported as missing. A patrolling officer noticed Cathy's missing car, a red 1990 Toyota Corolla, in a hospital parking lot a few days later on February 19th. Her body was discovered in the car trunk with at least 74 stabbing wounds, and the front seat and bumper of the vehicle were allegedly covered with blood. As per the results from the autopsy, her face, head, and upper torso were all stabbed, and her wrists and neck were fatally cut. Her handbag was gone, and the driver's seat was totally reclined, which was uncommon given the fact that Cathy wasn't really tall. Based on a visible handprint inside the trunk, police concluded that Cathy was supposedly still alive when she was pushed into it. Exsanguination, being drained of blood as a result of all the stab wounds, was identified by medical examiners as the cause of death. The investigation into Cathy's disappearance quickly developed into a homicide. Detectives had suspicions about Cathy Torrez's boyfriend, Sam Lopez, from the beginning, as he had provided a false alibi, claiming to be with his cousin Xavier at the time of the killing. Without any tangible proof, the case remained cold for nearly 21 years, and was only reopened several years later, after Xavier had been related to the DNA found on the victim's clothes. Sam Lopez received a 26-year-to-life sentence after being subsequently convicted guilty of first-degree murder. In the meanwhile, after entering a guilty plea to involuntary manslaughter, Xavier Lopez received a sentence of 4 years and 8 months. Sam allegedly attacked Cathy during the couple's disagreement, according to Xavier's testimony, which he gave while in his truck. Then he assisted Sam in getting rid of the body. In 2017, Telma Boinville, then 51 years old, resided in Papukea, Hawaii's peaceful North Shore community. Her husband's name was Kevin Emery. They both have a daughter named Makana, who was 8 years old. Telma worked as an elementary school teacher in the neighborhood. She also performed housekeeping duties at a Hawaiian vacation rental to contribute to her family's income. Surfing, running, yoga, martial arts, and baking were among her favorite activities. On Thursday, December 7, 2017, after picking Makana up from Sunset Beach Elementary School, Telma went to a Waikiki Road vacation rental home, which was owned by clients of her cleaning company. Makana watched movies in the Toyota Tacoma pickup truck while her mother cleaned the 2-story house inside. Soon after entering the property, Telma intercepted a couple who were busily committing a burglary there. Through an unlocked window, 23-year-old Stephen Brown and his 20-year-old girlfriend, Haley Dandurand, broke inside the residence. After prompting Telma to lay down, they bound her hands, struck her with a baseball bat, and ultimately strangled her. Subsequently, Brown went to Telma's truck and instructed her daughter to exit and accompany him. He told Makana, quite coldly, that they had put her mother to death. After Brown and Danduran brought the child upstairs, they duct-taped the girl's mouth and fastened her to a bedpost. The pair then got into Telma's truck and drove off. Soon after, a couple of Australian vacationers who were renting the house came inside and saw Telma's lifeless body. As soon as they heard movement inside, they rushed to dial 911. About 3:20 p.m., the incident was reported. When police arrived to the scene, they found Telma's lifeless body, tied up, lying in a pool of her own blood. Alongside the body, they discovered a knife, hammer, and mallet. McConnell was upstairs, unharmed, yet tied to the bed frame. When investigators called Telma's husband, Kevin Emery, they told him what had happened. He was prohibited from entering the residence. Then he hurried to the crime scene in an ambulance to console his daughter. Police were informed by Telma's daughter that a man with green hair had broke into the house and forced her inside. He was assisted by a woman with pink hair in binding McConnell to the bed. Following the release of an emotional Facebook video by Garrett McNamara, the case received substantial media attention. He is the twin brother of Telma Emery's husband, Kevin Emery. He stated in the Facebook video that he would pay $100,000 for any information that would lead to the suspect's arrest. The 35-second video went viral. "I am offering $100,000 in cash to the person who can identify the person who restrained and duct-taped my niece and caused the death of her mother at Waikiki Beach on Hawaii's North Shore. $100,000 straight away if you can tell me who just killed my twin brother's wife," stated McNamara. While in the ambulance, McConnell also told her father about the suspect's appearances. Garrett, Kevin's twin brother, texted him a picture that he had somehow found of the couple. The source of the photo is not known, but once Kevin shared it on Instagram and offered a $100,000 prize, a public manhunt for the culprits was initiated. Kevin likewise provided the picture to the responding policeman. Kevin remembered, "I told the police officer that these are the people who just killed my wife." McConnell was trembling when I asked if I could show her an image so she could confirm if it was the couple she had seen. She swiftly said yes as she slammed the phone away. Thankfully, McConnell was spared from seeing her mother's body that day. An all-points bulletin of Telma's truck was released by police officials. When the truck was discovered in a Walmart parking lot at Mililani Town Center that evening, Brown and Dandurand were taken into custody by law officials. CCTV footage captured Dandurand purchasing an untraceable cell phone from the Walmart store in Mililani. She apparently still thought they'd be able to avoid the crowd of policemen and civilians waiting for them outside. Using Telma's bank card, she made the mobile phone's payment. The card was in the front pocket of her hoodie. According to police, at least 75 citizens were searching for the culprits when the stolen truck was found in Mililani. 7 hours had passed since Telma Boinville's body was found, and the couple suspected of killing her was taken into custody by the authorities. After being detained for the weekend, they were brought before a Honolulu County judge early on Monday, December 11, 2017. Bail for Dandurand was set at $500K, and for Brown it was set at $1 million. According to officials, 23-year-old Stephen Brown was aggressive and uncooperative when he was taken into custody. "Just shoot me. I deserve this," he said on the spur of the moment. A similar request was made to the police by 20-year-old Haley Dandurand. "Can you just pull your gun out and shoot me in the head? After today, my life is done." The tranquil community of North Shore had been devastated by the traumatic news. Family members and friends were in mourning over Telma's unfortunate passing. Virginia Herbert, a friend of Telma's, was still in disbelief of the news at a vigil held on Friday evening, December 8th. She would exert all of her energy into socializing. She would celebrate life, Herbert told Honolulu News at the time. While attending the vigil, Telma's husband Kevin revealed he had previously reached to an understanding with his wife's murderer. "I forgive you, even though it is very challenging for me to say this at this moment. To the people who did this, I know this is an act of evil," he stated in the video. He urged them to love their families, friends, and neighbors. The case then paused for reasons that were unclear, and some people assumed that it went cold. It seemed as though the couple might not be guilty as initially thought. There was widespread protest and unrest as a result of the delays in the trial. The lawsuit began in 2023, over 5 years after Telma was viciously murdered at the Hawaii vacation house. Stephen Brown and Haley Danderand were charged with homicide in the second degree for taking Telma's life, as well as first-degree theft and kidnapping. In Telma's case, Brown was the first of the two defendants to go before a jury. Haley Danderand's trial has not yet begun. She has entered a not guilty plea earlier. Brown, who stood in his own defense during his trial, had tried to put the responsibility on his girlfriend. The pair smoked a bit of marijuana outside the house. "I had assumed that we would only be hanging around," Brown stated. He claimed that Telma was forced to lie down by Danderand, who was carrying a machete, in order for them to tie her up and restrain her. During cross-examination, Brown said, "We asked her to lay down. She cooperated." According to Brown's testimony in court, he went to inspect the property and returned to find his girlfriend had severely wounded Telma. He claimed that when he briefly left the premises, Telma was unhurt and seemed to be doing fine. Deputy Prosecutor Scott Bell, however, stated in closing remarks that Brown was the only defendant physically capable of restraining Telma. As to the findings of the medical examiner, Telma Boinville suffered 31 injuries to her body, including wounds from a sharp object and blunt force trauma to her head. William Bagasol, his defense lawyer, inquired the state's DNA expert. He demonstrated with a hammer, knife, machete, meat tenderizer, and bat that none of them contained any traces of Brown's DNA. After less than 4 hours of deliberation, the 12-member jury found 28-year-old Stephen Brown guilty on all 4 counts, even though his DNA was not discovered on the items in question. On Friday, January 20th, 2023, Stephen Brown was convicted on 2 counts of kidnapping, 1 count of burglary, and for taking Telma's life. Brown looked emotionless, staring straight ahead, while the judge read the verdict. A trial jury in a circuit court decided on January 24, 2023, that Stephen Brown must serve a longer sentence in order to safeguard the community. Following that decision, Judge Rowena Somerville was given the option of life in prison without the chance of parole. The date of his sentencing was set for May 10, 2023. The details of his sentencing are still under wraps. The trial for Haley Danderand is scheduled to begin in July 2023. She pleaded not guilty to the charges against her. Sheriff's deputies were dispatched to an unincorporated region of Rohnert Park, a planned city of moderate size located approximately 50 miles north of San Francisco, California, on June 27, 1983. A female body was discovered there by a 7-year-old child behind a real estate company near the intersection of East Cotati Avenue and Petaluma Hill Road. Upon arrival, police found that the woman had been fatally battered with planks from a nearby stack of wood. From the crime site, evidence was gathered and preserved for potential use afterwards. The woman was promptly identified by investigators as 37-year-old Noelle Russo. On June 24, 1983, her body was discovered after she had not been seen in 3 days. Noelle had been clashing with her boyfriend, according to her friends, so she went to spend some time with a friend in Santa Rosa, California. That evening, Noelle was being driven by a friend to Courthouse Square, from where she was going to catch the Golden Gate Transit bus back to her Rohnert Park apartment. This was the last time anyone saw her. Detectives started piecing together her background. Noelle had grown up in San Mateo County and made local news in 1962 when she was named Miss Burlingame. In an interview with the San Mateo Times, the 16-year-old stated that performing the twist was her favorite sport and that her goal was to become a model. "I couldn't have been more delighted," the cheery teen exclaimed. "I never believed I'd win. I only registered to please my mother." Noelle was seen grinning in a picture with her arms full of flowers that went with the story. Over the subsequent 2 decades, she had 2 marriages and divorces, and she had a son as well. She had previously been employed in Colorado as a trainee forest ranger. After that, she went back to her native Bay Area and resumed her studies at Santa Rosa Junior College, where she was slain. She and her 18-year-old son resided in an apartment on Avram Avenue in Rohnert Park. She intended to relocate to the thermal springs in Boise. Noelle was known to hitchhike, and she enjoyed riding her bike around the town. Her friends were concerned that she might be overly trusting of people. It is believed by detectives that Noelle never took a bus back to Rohnert Park. It appeared that she had met someone before the bus arrived. Investigators employed a sketch artist in the days following the murder to create a drawing of Noelle in the attire she was wearing on June 24, 1983, which they then distributed in an attempt to gather information. Numerous interviews were performed, and a substantial amount of evidence was gathered by deputies and detectives during the investigation. Over the years, detectives identified a few people of interest, but the case remained unsolved and no arrests were made. In 2010, the investigation was reopened by the sheriff's office. Over the course of the following 12 years, investigators started using DNA analysis techniques, sending many pieces of evidence to the Serological Research Institute and the Santa Clara County Crime Lab. At last, the authorities declared in a news release that Alfredo Carretero Jr., age 65, had been taken into custody on October 2, 2023. He was charged with the murder of Noelle Russo. Russo's family has been informed of the arrest and would like privacy, according to Deputy Rob Dillon. The current scheduled date of Alfredo Carretero Jr.'s court appearance is October 18, 2023. Whether Noelle knew him or not is still unknown. It's being considered by investigators that he might be one of her former boyfriends. Other than his past convictions in Sonoma County in 1995 and 2001 for possession of stolen property and illegal narcotics, respectively, authorities have not disclosed much information about Carretero. Additionally, according to court documents, he was involved in a civil case alleging domestic abuse in September 1985, roughly 2 years after Noelle passed away. One of Noelle's closest friends' moms reminisced about their days spent together in San Francisco. As with everyone in the neighborhood, they enjoyed a little bit of bar hopping and lightheartedness, and that's just what they were doing the evening before she vanished. She added that although Noelle might have been talking to an ex-boyfriend, she did not believe it was him that she went out with after they parted their ways. However, they somehow managed to get separated during the night, and she was unable to contact her for the entire next day, before, of course, they found her. She added that her mother carried the revelation of the subsequent grief along with her for years, to the point that she kept a notebook and frequently wrote about her friend's death. I believe that whenever she glanced at her, her eyes sparkled. She was simply a lovely lady, and it's evident from her writing and my mother's words that she was someone my mother truly cared about, and the fact that she lost her absolutely crushed her. In 1976, Kyle Clinkscales, then 22 years old, resided in LaGrange, Georgia. The young man, who was infatuated with athletics, was a student at Auburn University in Alabama. While attending university, he was starting to figure out what job path to take and where he fit in the world. After finishing his part-time work at a LaGrange bar on January 27, 1976, Kyle headed for Auburn University, where he was a sophomore, a distance of approximately 45 minutes by car. However, Kyle never made it to university. His parents filed a missing persons report after being unable to reach him. Kyle's residence had no signs of unusual activity, indicating that he had either moved out or fled. Investigators assume that during his trip, something might have occurred. Simply put, they had no idea what it might be. In the immediate weeks following his disappearance, Kyle was the focus of a thorough search conducted by the Troup County Sheriff's Office and his parents. Lakes were emptied, incentives offered, and deputies combed across forests in search of a single hint. Kyle's parents, John and Louise Clinkscales, saw the endeavor as an all-consuming, impassioned search, similar to several other cases of missing persons across the nation. Family members and friends have been beseeching for information. Searchers have grown weary with every fruitless search, and members of the weary community are gasping that anything so eerie could have happened to one of their own. Many were in appreciation of the determination. Since Kyle Clinkscales had always enjoyed New Orleans, his parents bought ads in the city requesting assistance in finding their son. He had enjoyed his visit to Hawaii as a child, so his parents sent letters to every police station in the state. When tips came in that a person matching his description of a strong jaw, wavy brown hair, and dense brows had been spotted, they drove to the locations where those tips originated. Nearly 5,000 bumper stickers asking for information had been distributed by the Clinkscales 2 years after their son vanished. They started advocating on behalf of families whose loved ones went missing and made an effort to draw attention to less well-publicized cases. That in 1985, Clinkscales was one of the guests invited to the White House to discuss approaches with President Ronald Reagan regarding the problem of missing and exploited children. The parents' desire to locate their son would occasionally give way to exhaustion in the house where Kyle Clinkscales had grown up and was adorned with images of him grinning and sporting a bow tie. John Clinkscales conveyed his discomfort during a 1978 interview. Perhaps his son, who was not interested in college, assumed he was a financial burden on his parents. It's possible that he chose to vanish in order to make things easier for us, rather than to drop out or express his feelings. One of Louise and John Clinkscales' notes would always be left behind when they left their LaGrange, Georgia, home to look for him. They wanted their kid, if he came back while they were gone, to know that a lot had happened since they'd last seen him in 1976. The Clinkscales would write to him. They adored him, and there was an extra car key for him on the dining room table. In case their son's remains were ever discovered, John and Louis Clinkscales provided DNA samples to the authorities for analysis. John Clinkscales sadly died in 2007. At the age of 92, Louise passed away in January 2021. About 30 miles southwest of LaGrange in Cusaita, Alabama, a driver was heading on a 2-lane road. He alerted the authorities on December 7, 2021, after noticing a rusting vehicle's hatchback protruding from the creek. A 1974 Ford Pinto was sticking its head out of the creek. Inside the rusted automobile were human remains, along with roughly 50 skeleton bits covered in muck. After all this time, it was unclear what made the car visible from the road. The remains were identified as Kyle Clinkscales in February 2023 by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Since the road would not have been Kyle's primary route to Auburn, though it might have been an alternate one, the creek where the automobile was discovered in Chambers County, Alabama, outside of LaGrange, was never investigated. Given the age of the bones, Troup County, Georgia coroner Aaron Hackley stated that it may take months for investigators to identify the precise cause, if they can identify one at all. According to Mrs. Hackley, she called Kyle's Aunt Martha Morrison as soon as she received word from the detectives that the bones had been identified. Mrs. Morrison expressed her relief and regret at the same time that Kyle's parents weren't alive to hear the news. They were really devout Christians, Martha continued. They never lost hope and always had faith that things will turn out well for them. When Kyle Clinkscales' remains are returned to his family, we're going to take a car to Shadow Lawn Cemetery in LaGrange. He will be buried nestled in an area designated years before, there in the soft ground between his parents' graves. If you find this video compelling, show your support by giving it a thumbs up subscribing to our channel, and ringing that notification bell. By doing so, you'll stay updated about the latest investigations and mysteries. Your support means the world to us as we continue to pursue the truth in the world of unsolved cases.